Good morning.
Wow, good morning. Hello, everyone. My name is Peter Rinch. I'm the CEO of Hollyhock, and we're so excited to welcome you to this first of a six-part series, Sheltering in Community, which is an offering we're doing in this time. The last few weeks have really been challenging for so many people around the world, us here at Hollyhock as well, and we've been trying to figure out how best to continue our work to answer the call of what the world needs right now. And we're really excited to start with this six-part offering. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Karen Mahon Carrington. But before I do, I'll just say a few words about Karen. I met Karen probably about 15 years ago as somewhat of a legendary social change activist, environmentalist. I remember being quite intimidated by her, and when I first met her, I didn't know what to say, so I just probably looked down when I first met her. And Karen has done so many remarkable things in her life, from leading Greenpeace Canada to running Hollyhock Leadership Institute, and now she's working on really important adoption work for climate, running an organization called Climate Hope. And so we couldn't be more excited to have our first online offering done by Karen, who is also the vice chair of Hollyhock and a great friend and mentor. Take it away, Karen.
Thanks, Peter. Welcome, everyone. I'm lucky enough to be here in the Hollyhock Lodge. Peter's upstairs, so I'm looking out at the ocean. And invite you to just kind of take in your surroundings wherever you're at. Notice the physical surroundings of where you're sitting. And let's do just 3 deep breaths together to just really get ourselves here. So deep breath in and an even deeper breath out. And on the out breath, if you have a sigh or an exhalation, that's even better. So let's just do that to get ourselves here. One last big deep breath and a big sigh on the exhalation. So we're meeting in this new Zoom space in our new world. And Loretta from Hollyhock is just going to take a minute and walk us through how to use this technology to serve us today.
Great, thank you, Karen. So hi, everyone. I'm Loretta. I'm Hollyhock's Communications Manager. And as Karen said, I'm just going to go through a few things that'll help make your experience smooth. So for those of you who haven't used Zoom before, in your top right corner, it'll say speaker view or gallery view. You can flip between those two to either see the main person who is speaking or to see a gallery of everybody who's on the call. And there's more than one page of people on the call. So in the left and right sides, there's page tabs, and you can scroll through to see everybody's faces that way. You've all been muted upon entry. This is just to help with any extra sounds. So basic etiquette is to mute yourself unless you are speaking. And you can unmute and mute yourself in the bottom left corner. There's a little microphone. You can press or unpress that, and pressing spacebar on a lot of devices will also work. If you're having any issues with like lag time or things aren't really coming through clearly, sometimes it can be helpful to stop your video. So next to the mute on the bottom left corner that says stop video, and this just takes your visual video out, but you will still hear the audio, and so you can turn that on or off as you like. And then in the middle at the bottom, there's a chat room. So if everyone could just click on that. I'm just gonna write hello everyone in the chat room, so you should see my typing in there. So whenever, yeah, exactly. Hi, Lewis. Perfect. This is a great space where you can speak to everybody in the room. It says to everyone. If you pull the drop-down menu there, you can also send a private message. If you're having any tech issues, you can message me privately directly. I've labeled my name as Hollyhock just so it's easier for you to find. So you can find Hollyhock and send me a private message. And then a couple other pieces. If you find yourself resonating with something someone's saying, or you want to show your support, you can do sparkle fingers. This is from American Sign Language for applause, and it's a nice way to show your support without having to interrupt the verbal space of the call. And then if you're finding you're having lag issues, like the sound quality isn't coming through, you can put a cross over your screen. So if I see a lot of those, I know that there's something up maybe on our end of things, and we can pause and try to fix that. And then finally, we are recording the beginning of this call. We will go into breakout rooms at one point. We'll be sharing things a little bit more personally. Those breakout rooms will not be recorded. So if you have any issues with the recording at the beginning of this call, you can also send me a private message and we can make sure that your video is not included in that. Are there any questions? Great. Okay, and if anything comes up again, you feel free to privately message me, and I'll hand it back over to Karen.
Okay, thanks, Loretta. And it's nice to see everyone in the chat. Denman Island, California, Victoria, Portland. Just even being with a group of people who want to be together in this time, I think, is already our first step of connecting and grounding. So what we're going to do is, in this session, is I'm going to offer some reflections. We're going to do a little grounding meditation. I'm going to offer some reflections on this moment, and then we're going to go into small groups and just practice some deep listening, some connecting with where we're at, wherever that is, in amongst all this madness, giving the gift of our attention and our listening to each other in small groups, and then coming back and debriefing. So simple, the basics. How do we show up for each other in these times of crisis? So why don't we just begin with a little short meditation to bring us fully into this space. So remembering why you are practicing, why you are here today, to help ourselves and others, for the two-leggeds and the four-leggeds, and to let ourselves open to the possibility that by you being really present for yourself and each other today, we are actually collectively helping hold the center in this moment of huge upheaval and uncertainty. So just simply bringing your attention to your breath, letting your breath settle and become even, bringing your attention to your sit bones. If you can, feel your feet on the floor. Feel your crown extending to the sky. Gently drop your chin. Your attention to your body and your focus on your breath. And we'll just breathe together for a couple of minutes. And bringing our attention back to our Zoom room, I invite you all, especially if you have it on gallery view, to just look at all the faces. Just take a minute and have a look at all the faces. And if you'd like to, in the chat, I invite you to post a word or phrase about how you are feeling right now in this moment. A word or a phrase, and we'll see them coming in the chat. Calm and connected are the first four. Connection. It's amazing what happens just when we take the time to slow down. A lot of people saying they're feeling grateful and present. And I think that is part of our work at this time for those of us that have the capacity and the health and the well-being to be able to take this time and space. That for us to do that work is really helping create a web of more certainty and more calm across our world, which is so troubled now. Keep, if you'd like, sorry about that, if you'd like, letting us know how you're doing in the chat. Let's just talk for a moment about really what we're going through. I mean, this is a time of uncertainty and upheaval, the likes of which most of us living at this time have never seen before. Every day now, there are new shocks, new surprises, new losses. And this pandemic arrives in a world that is already in crisis. I mean, I've been working like many of you, we've all been experiencing the climate crisis and the suffering that it is bringing, the destabilization of our natural systems, of our ecological systems, our social systems, even already our economic systems. And now we seem to be headed into a great correction of some sort. For some, I think there is a feeling that Mother Nature is calling us to account, that we have been living these crazy, mad lives, out of control, really, for so long, and that this is a really serious wake-up call, and in many ways, though, a kind of a gentle wake-up call. I mean, it could have been an earthquake, it could have been a pandemic that killed a huge amount of the human population, half the human population. We've seen these kinds of things in the past, but we were given warning, and we were told to stay home, and we were told to stay with our family, for those of us that can. So in many ways, it's a gentle wake-up call, and at the same time, it's a total crisis. And I feel like in many ways, we're hospicing the culture that was. And we're in this moment of deep unknowing and uncertainty. And how we meet this moment is really important, because how we meet this moment of uncertainty, if we can meet it as much as we can from a place of connection and compassion, rather than fear and contraction, then surely that will help define what comes to be on the other side. So how are we feeling in this moment? It's kind of hard to know how we're feeling sometimes, because we have a complex layering of emotions, of fear, of grief, of stress, maybe the numbness that comes from overwhelm. I've heard people say, all of these things. I felt all of these things. Day before yesterday, I sobbed for about 2 hours nonstop, that kind of like gut sobbing. And while my family said, we're all worried about me, I said, no, I'm glad to be sobbing. I need to let this move through me. And 2 hours later, I had a beautiful dinner with my husband, and the light in the sky was perfect. And, you know, I was really struck by how sorrow and gratitude how are living in such close proximity these days, how the light and the dark are occupying such intimate quarters. And feeling into both of them in this moment is one of the ways in which we can bring some sanity and some healing. In the climate anxiety work that I've been doing with this organization, Climate Hope, there's a term that's emerged, which is pre-traumatic stress disorder. Not post-traumatic, but pre-traumatic. And I think in some ways we're all feeling some version of that. And one doesn't have to know that one is in trauma to be in trauma. One doesn't have to be aware of trauma to be in trauma. And I think it is the case that we are going through some level of societal collective trauma. You know, what are the signs of trauma? A destruction of temporality, that things that you can't count on things being the same as they were yesterday, tomorrow, that time is disrupted. And I hear people saying that all the time, like everyone feel like yesterday was a week long, you know, its time is very strange now. Trauma looks like a violation of expectancy, that the trajectory that we saw has been disrupted, the trajectory for ourselves and for our collective social lives has been disrupted. Emotional freezing is another symptom of trauma, or compartmentalizing, not letting ourselves feel the tragedy. And while there is definitely a healthy aspect of compartmentalization that we talk about, as you know, which is to say that we can't let ourselves feel the grief and the trauma all of the time, and that to say, you know, now I'm attending to this crisis of COVID and what's happening in India and Italy and in my own community. And now I'm simply attending to my life as it is. And to be able to have that healthy compartmentalization is one of the learnings that's coming forward in the trauma work. And of course, just the simple need for witnessing, for grieving. And so how do we find time every day, both to grieve and to live our lives that we have been gifted in this moment. So how do we connect into our feelings? That's what we're going to be doing in this call. How do we be present to ourselves, to this moment? And I understand we're all in different circumstances, and we can all, you know, be present to different degrees. So this isn't a presence Olympics where you get to, you know, beat yourself up if you're not the most present. But how can you be just as present as you can be in this moment? And how do we make sense of this world that, you know, where our compass no longer functions? The maps that we had for ourselves to navigate our lives are no longer relevant. And so we're in deeply unknown territory. One way through the anxiety, as we've said, is really just to let yourself feel the grief and feel the feelings. And at the same time, I like to share a story from one of my teachers and friends, Rabbi Zalman Schachter. We had a friend that was living with a terminal diagnosis. And he said, the most important thing is to live part of each day as if you don't have the diagnosis. And I think that's a great teaching for us in this time. We need to be present to it, and we need to remember that we are still alive, and that it's spring in the Northern Hemisphere, and you know, the tulips are about to come up and the daffodils are already out. The resilience of nature is certainly a source of huge inspiration. So we're going to go into a sharing and listening space, out of the kind of head intellectual space into a more body centered place. We're going to go into small groups, and we're going to share how we're feeling. We'll give you some specific questions. And you're just going to listen and witness each other without giving advice, because we know that advice, separates us more than it connects us. But really just to be present with each other. And, you know, we know now, out of the field of trauma and anxiety work, is this idea of co-regulation, that by by regulating our own nervous systems, by myself calming down, slowing my rhythms, being present to you, that you can feel that, your systems can perceive that, and together we are co-regulating each other. And the fascinating thing that I've found, I've been doing these kinds of calls now for several years on the questions of climate anxiety and the potential for social collapse, which we thought was several years off yet, but here we are. And I have found it amazing the extent to which we can actually be present to each other and co-regulate in these small Zoom rooms. So let yourself be open to whatever comes. The principles around deep listening. We say there were 5 principles. I think Loretta can paste them in the chat. Basically, a commitment to connection, being present with ourselves and each other, and including the desire to disconnect if that arises. To notice numbness if that's what's there. Anything is welcome within ourselves and each other, whatever it is, whether it's grief or whether it's joy or whether it's relief or whether it's numbness. To really honor the body, to come back to the body, to really try and presence from the body, feel the sensations in your body, be with the other person in terms of empathy and listening. And of course, like always, owning our own experience, taking responsibility for our own triggers, and staying within our own experience. So Loretta's going to put us in breakout rooms, and we're going to be we're asking 2 questions. You're going to be in a breakout room with 3 people, and each person will have about 15 minutes. So it's quite long. And you're going to be asked 2 questions. The first is, how has this affected you? What we found is that people just need to talk about what their life has become and how they're feeling about it. But the second question is, how are you feeling in this moment? So if I'm speaker 1, I'm going to introduce myself to my 2 Zoom room mates. And then I'm going to get the question. There'll be a prompt that comes into the room. How has this affected you? And then about partway through, you'll get another question, which is, how are you feeling, if you haven't already moved to that. And at the end of that 15 minutes, there'll be a little reminder that it's time to switch to the next speaker. And if you have some time before your 15 minutes is up, your group may want to offer some reflections to you, not advice, but just simply reflections of what they've heard, what they are seeing and feeling with what you're in your group together. So does that make sense to everybody? I can only see some people, but I see some sparkle fingers. Good, great. Okay. Well, by the miracle of technology, Loretta is going to put us into small groups, and I would invite also confidentiality. These aren't being recorded. Whatever you say in the moment is what you say, and then it is gone. So enjoy your small groups, and I'll give you to Loretta, and then we'll come back and do a little debrief and check out. So Loretta?
Yeah, Karen, there's just a question here in the chat. How long will they be in the groups in total?
45 minutes. It's 3 people at 15 minutes each.
Perfect. Okay, so I am going to break you into the breakout groups. Just a couple of things about that. It'll take a second, then you'll rearrange, and then you'll see yourself and 2 other people. You can mute and unmute yourself using the mute button in your bottom left corner. So make sure you unmute yourself before you talk. I think there's also a chat room in there. I will be giving like reminders for when to change to the next person. Those will show up at the top of your screen. So if you need help, you can use the chat box. You can also, if you really need to, you can exit the room and come back to this big room. Myself and Karen will still be here, and we can always put you back into that room if you're ready to go back. Okay, I'm just checking there's questions. Are there any other questions before I put you into breakout groups?
To check. Can you,
Okay.
so just to remind you, it's 15 minutes on each speaker.
There's two of us in the room, so we're just. I would imagine that it would be fine just to share, because that's going to end our time.
Sure, because we can only you do groups of 3 and then Zoom just sends you off, so it's 3 again.
Yeah, so you can remanage your time as it makes sense. Okay, great. And just a note here, if people face the light, we can see them better. So just making sure that you have good light in your room. All right, so let's try this. Breakout rooms.
Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. Welcome back. Everyone's still slowly coming back to the main room. I hope all of your conversations were really full and connective.
Welcome back. Yep. I invite people to put a word or two in the chat about how that was for you. I see some familiar faces. I think we're all back now. So in my group, I heard things that, people were grateful for the gift of the pause. For other people, they feel busier than ever, particularly those in the helping professions. That we've been expecting this in some way or some form, and yet it's so shocking and so surprising. We heard from people whose relatives are ill or in hospitals. And we heard from people that sort of feel some relief that this feels overdue in some way, this correction for the way we have been living. A lot of people shared coping strategies, and some of the ones, here's some people, if you can read in the chat, that people felt that was reassuring, that they've met a new friend, enjoyed connecting. I have found it shocking doing this for the past couple of years, how much we can find new friends in these strange ways, and that's a gift in this time. And what about some coping strategies? Can people put in the chat things that came up in your group that sounded helpful? The ones in my group were, a lot of people talked about getting outside at all when you can. We talked about exercise. We talked about having a daily structure, creating some structure for ourselves, a bit of a schedule. People found that really helpful. People in the chat meditating, of course, finding humor. I mean, I think that there's all these silly things going around on the internet, but somehow the humor is a big relief. I think a lot of us are finding that. Molly copes by making soup, connecting by elders. My friends we're each taking on a connection with someone who lives alone, so that we do a check-in with them every day, so that we know that they're okay and being thought of. So a lot of great coping strategies now in the chat around gardening and permission to just be and not decide. A friend of mine said the best advice he got is that we don't need to take this time to, you don't need to take this time to write the great novel or, reorganize every single thing in your entire house or learn to speak French, but you just need to get through it. You just need to get through with as much kindness and compassion for yourself and others as possible. Stop listening to the news, taking a break from the news. That's coming up as a coping strategy. That's kind of what we talked about in the opening of this session about healthy compartmentalization, that we don't want to go into denial, but the practice of being some parts of the day with the awareness of the larger suffering, and some parts of the day to be more contained within our own lives and what we can control. Okay, well, thank you everyone for that. And I think the technology was mostly worked really well and was a little bumpy for some, and lots of us are still learning. And that's true for Hollyhock as well. So we're going to be doing this every Thursday for the next 5 Thursdays. We'll have different presenters and teachers on, but every Thursday at 8:30 to 10, we'll be having these kinds of offerings. We'll get a little better at the technology. You'll all get a little better at the technology. Feel free to invite family and friends and community. This is something that Hollyhock wants to make available to as many people as would like to participate. There are, I wanted to leave you with the invitation to a practice, a journaling practice around 2 questions. The first question being, what fears or challenges are present for you now? Because we know that just naming our feelings goes a long way to being able to process them. So the first question is, what fears or challenges are present for you now? And the second question is, where do you see possibilities for healing? Where do you see possibilities for healing? So I've been working with a group and we're doing journaling on those 2 questions, and it's been very helpful. So that's one practice I offer. The other is, of course, to tune back in here, 8:30 next Thursday. Hollyhock is working to move a number of our offerings online. So Matthew Fox and I were scheduled to do an event in Vancouver on May 29th and 30th. We'll be moving that online. It's titled COVID and Climate, Apocalypse or Awakening. And I think, you know, to some degree, of course, it's a bit of both. So we'll be living into those questions, and you'll get all this information from Hollyhock, likely from Loretta. And so lastly, I just wanted to close by offering a poem that was shared in our group, and which I have, many of us have come across before. Really, I think it's so apt for this moment, though it was written 15 years ago by Wendell Berry. So the poem is, when despair grows in me and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things that do not tax their lives with thoughts of future grief. How do we be present to the suffering and awakening in this moment without unduly taxing our lives with thoughts of future grief? That is a meditation, I think, a meditation for all of humanity at this time. So thank you all very much for coming. Maybe if you want to, Loretta's going to send you the poem by email afterward.
Oh, I love it.
And lots of beautiful feelings in the chat. People saying they're emotional. I feel very emotional. Aptly so. Very blessed that we live in this time where at least the technology can bring us together in this way. So thanks to Hollyhock for hosting us. And maybe if you all want to unmute yourself and tell us goodbye.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Back, Karen. Thank you, Hollyhock.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a great day.
Everyone. Have a good day.
It'll be a better day now.